Story Species Story Medicine, extra strength. Ready to take your medicine with Gina Virginia Casella?
Species of medicine, open for the task. Extra strength is everything you'd ever ask. Many with the soil, many with the sea. Earth is a medicine for you and for me. Scrubbing off the tarnish, building up the trust. Honest little tales rising from the rust. The truth is in the living, truth is in skin. Open up the portal, let the healing in. Extra strength, extra soul. Medicine to make us whole. Feel the rhythm, feel the pace. In every single space. Are you ready for the cure? Keep it steady, keep it pure. Extra strength.
Oh, hey, Dragon Dreamers, Gina Virginia Casella here. Thank you so much for joining me today on Story Species, Story Medicine, Extra Strength. Today I've got my good friend Leon Southgate behind the stage, and it's so exciting because there's some rumbling going on in the background that I'll let Leon fill you in on. But let me first introduce him here. So there's so much to say about Leon, and I just want everybody to know he will be coming back as a returning guest, okay? So if you've got questions, put them in the chat. We'll see where we end up today. And absolutely, as I mentioned, we'll definitely have Leon back. He's also going to be a speaker for us at our upcoming conference, Falling Consciously. Got all kinds of things here popping up that usually don't pop up. So anyways, let me get busy with this bio because we've got lots of things to dive into here. So Leon is an academic researcher and author specializing in acupuncture, biophysical orgonomy, cloudbusters, and the weather, and so much more. Leon achieved a Master's of Science. He had a research degree looking at the subtle energy, which means orgone. So these ideas were brought forward by William Rilch. I'll have to ask Leon some of the pronunciation here. He was around 1897 to 1957. And in the context of Chinese acupuncture from 2000 to 2002. So then in 2008, Leon started writing what was to become his overviews of biophysical orgonomy, numbers 1 to 4, a complete synopsis of all the main research with orgone energy. It covers bions, orgone blankets, and orgone accumulators through to cloudbusters that affect the weather over half a continent. So check out Leon's archives at the Orgone and Consciousness Substack.com. I also have that linked for you in the comments as well as in the write-up. So about 2016, Leon got interested in the mysterious missing area of orgonomy, the science of orgone. So Rich had not managed to outline how orgone relates to consciousness. So in 2025, just last year, Leon conducted the first orgone and consciousness experiment showing that a subtle energy can scientifically be said to talk to people and have its own awareness. This involved 10 people over about 6 months. And Leon also conducted the first full repeat of Rich's energized orgone experiment from 1951 called the Oranor experiment in 2017, which you can also find on his Substack. And just a fun fact, like I said, there's lots to say about Leon Southgate. Leon used to be a nurse back in the day, and earlier than that, he was also a musician. So like I said, we need to have Leon back as a returning guest. He's a first time right here with us. Let's bring him to the stage. Trying to bring him to the stage here. Leon, I'm coming. I just got to scooch this down here. All right, here he is. Hi, Leon. How are you doing today?
Yeah, good. Thanks for that intro. That that's a good intro. Oh, can you hear me now?
There was some rumbling going on. I don't know if that is impacting our conversation right now.
Can you hear now?
Oh, I can hear you now. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, good.
How are
Oh,
you,
super.
Leon?
Yeah, I'm good. There might be a few strange electronic things going on because the energy from the orgone box, which is just, you can actually probably just about see it um, through the door in the other room, is where I store the orgone box, and at the moment it's making the strange anomalous rumble sound that it occasionally makes. It's a low pitched hum that it's a completely new orgone phenomena that only I've charted. It was about 8 years after I repeated Wilhelm Reich's Oranur experiment, which is ORANUR, which means orgone against nuclear. And it was back in 1951, and he wanted to see if subtle energy, or chi, or ether, or as Reich called it, orgone, could overcome nuclear radiation. So he got a very strong orgone field and exposed it to a small amount of 1 milligram of radium. And he repeated that for an hour a day over about 8 days. And that was the original Oranur experiment. And it created quite a lot of problems, and it got out of hand, and so no one repeated it for a long time. And then I repeated it in 2017 with a similar setup, but 1,000th of the radioactivity that Reich used, and I managed to repeat it and confirm all the anomalies, but without the emergency that Reich had. And then some 8 years after that, the box started making anomalous sounds at totally unpredictable times, and totally there's nothing you can do to precipitate it. I've tried I've tried a long list of more than half a dozen different things, and I've tried something new even this week, and there's nothing. The box seems to decide when it rumbles and nothing else.
I
can't
was
hear
going
you.
to ask that, how if you
Yeah,
can on demand, but it just whenever it wants to, right? I've got tons of
yeah,
questions for you, and even as you're speaking, my questions are already shifting. So on this can go in any
sure.
direction. But
Yeah,
just before we went live, that box started rumbling about half an hour ago, maybe 40 minutes ago now. And you
yeah.
were sharing that that hasn't happened in a while. So this is very exciting. Why don't you shine your light? Tell us what's going on live right now in your home.
Sure. Well, the box is actually rumbling at this very moment, and it started rumbling about 6 months to 6 months to a year. I can't remember the exact time, but myself and my daughter noticed it at first, and when it first started, it was continual for about 2 weeks, and then it was intermittent, and I tried everything I could to record it, but it was very difficult to record because the volume, it technically it should be recordable because it's just at the edge of human hearing. Most people could hear, well, technically you're supposed to be able to hear down to 20 hertz, but in practice that doesn't seem to be the case. Like I've 4 people have happened to be here when it's rumbled, and I've scientifically proven that it's there, but not via sound because it's so difficult to record. but out of 4 people, 3 can hear it, and one hasn't been able to hear it. And the 2 people who've mostly heard it always hear the same thing at the same time, and the same stop and the same start. Although younger people seem to be able to hear it better than older people, and at a greater distance. But the volume is quite low. So I haven't got sophisticated enough microphones to, and I've bought special microphones to try and do this. And the volume is too diffuse to record on an ordinary microphone. But for some strange reason, and the amplitude is only like minus 90 hertz, which is quite quiet, but it's a wide sound. You hear it in your head rather than in your ears, and sometimes you just sense it, like you know something's going on, and then the way I've proven that it exists scientifically is that through 2 smartphones. On one smartphone, I've got I'll show you because I've got it here. I've got an app, and that's what the app looks like when it's running. And this is just a screenshot of the app, and the actual rumble is right over it on the left hand side. There's like a solid band here, and that's the bottom bit is over time, and the top bit is those 2 lines are the peaks. But so when it's running, you see this line here continually being created. And
does that line go right through the yellow up to the red?
Well, the yellow and the red are just the peaks, and they're not the actual the actual band of sound. It goes in the second half of the display. And when it was a strange situation how I ended up with 2 smartphones. I dropped one down a toilet accidentally, and I had to have another smartphone the next day because I was visiting a colleague in Oxford, and to go from the northwest where I am to Oxford is really complicated, because there's the motorways in Britain are all north to south. So if you're going across the country, it's really complex route. So I didn't want to be without sat nav, which I don't use very often. So I went to the phone shop and got another phone, because it looked like that one was completely bust. And then the first phone completely recovered, 100% back to normal after being submerged in a loo. But having 2 smartphones meant that it suddenly occurred to me, even though I'd spent nearly a year trying to record this sound and spent hundreds of pounds on specialized microphones without any success, I'm pretty sure how I could record it. I could record it with, I think they're called infrasound microphones, but they cost thousands of pounds and need a specialist operator. And so that's out my budget. And I've tried to contact people who've got infrasound microphones, but I've not heard anything back. But I wasn't particularly interested in this recording the sound. I just wanted to prove it exists. But I could do that with 2 smartphones, because although I can't auditorily, that's not a word, I can't record and reproduce the sound in an audible way, but I can visualize the sound. Like, I think the manufacturers, since I've been talking about this app that I've used, I've noticed it's hard to get the app, or other people have said to me online, oh, I can't find that app anymore on Google Store. And it's called Spectroid, SPCTROID. And it's an amazing app, because it shows you just how like our smartphones can hear us, can hear your tummy rumble slightly, or literally a smartphone sat on the desk can hear what's a very slight sound. Literally a slight rumble of your tummy, it will pick that up, and a pin dropping, it'll the Spectroid app will see it really clearly. That would be quite a loud noise on the Spectroid app. So the microphone on, well, both of my smartphones are less than 2 years old, and the microphones, although they can't record and reproduce the sound that the box makes, they can sense that it's there. So I take one phone, and I put it next to the box, and people can see where the sound is being produced. And then I take the other phone and record the first phone, and then people can see me walking away from the box, and the line of the sound drops out, and then I walk back towards the box and the line starts again. And I've recorded that dozens, more than dozens of times. So, and I put a couple of the best ones up on my YouTube channel. So that has convinced the other researchers in the field that the sound is real, because they couldn't just go on my word. But there is a whole field called archaeoacoustics, and which is like the sounds that stone circles make, or the sound that stone buildings can make. And I spoke to an academic from archaeoacoustics circles, and he said it's quite common that you hear the sounds inside your head, and that like sometimes the energy box is a lot less strong than it was when I did the original Oronor experiment. I wouldn't be able to keep the box at its original strength in the house. It would be overpowering. But because it was stored outside for a period, the strength is a lot less. So I can store it indoors. So it's in my dining room. Well, I got a kitchen diner, and it's in the dining room area. And sometimes I've been cooking, and I can feel, I don't hear it, but I feel something. And I feel kind of like a density, or a vibrating density. And I thought, oh, the rumble's started up again. I've noticed my hearings for the rumble, it isn't as good as it was a few months back. I sense it sometimes rather than hear it. Anyway, when I sense it, I get the app on the phone, and it 100% of the time when I sense it, the app is showing that the sound is there. So that's a completely new orgone phenomena. No one's charted that. Even Wright didn't chart that.
This is so fascinating and groundbreaking, and you have such a scientific background. Thank you for speaking in an everyday language that folks like myself can follow along. So many questions for you. I don't even know where to start. Can the box regain its strength, and/or can you build a new one? I never even thought about that.
Yeah, that's a good question, because basically my box copies the principles of the Ark of the Covenant, which I didn't do consciously. I only found out afterwards that the Ark of the Covenant's based on the same principles. But it's actually quite easy to make. I mean, people, the ancient Hebrews had a device for communicating with a higher entity, and it was an orgone box. It was actually an Oronor box, the same as mine, and the actual principles of it are quite simple. That it's just a layered, like orgone accumulators use double layers of metallic and non-metallic materials So one orgone layer is one layer of metal materials and one layer of organic materials, like sheep's wool is a good one, or plastic or glass. And the best metallic material is gold, and the next best is probably steel or iron. And so the inner sheeting of the box is steel, and then there's a sheep's wool layer, and then another steel, and then another sheep's wool. So that there's about four double layers, I think, in the panels of the box, and then an outer layer of sheet steel in the inside, and the very most outermost layer is Cellutex, or a fiberboard. And all the different Reich style orgone accumulators have that layering. So yes, I could make it stronger. I could take the panels off and renew the materials, because I suspect that some of them got a bit damp at one point. So if I wanted to make it stronger, I could just take the steel panel off and replace the wire wool and the sheep's wool layering inside it, and then it should return to full strength then. I have boosted it a little bit by putting orgone pillows inside the box, new orgone pillows. It would be, for the consciousness experiments, if it was at full strength, it would be too strong, unless I had like a church hall. I could, if I had a church hall that I could put the box in the center, and then do the experiment with people at a distance from the box. But doing it in my house, it's just at the right strength for the experiments I did at the moment. Again, that was unplanned. There's so much that's happened that is just like I've been guided, really, almost unconsciously half the time.
Yeah, there's a lot of synchronicity going on. Even chatting with you, it's like you're answering questions that are brewing, and then it seems like as your process is unfolding, you're being shown the way as well. I was going to ask you if you wanted to increase or decrease the intensity, but it sounds like it needs to be at a certain level so that people can receive it. And then Julia Ankerhaven's in the chat, commenting that the box talks to you in your sleep. So when that starts happening, do you like turn it down? Can you just put a blanket over, close the door? What do you do in those situations?
I would try and listen as hard as I can, really. If the box is talking to me in my sleep, it's a different type of dream. I mean, the only thing with my setup is my bedroom is above the box, so I think I'm continually exposed to a level of energy from the box, and I've noticed that sometimes I seem to dream continually, which I don't think is normal. I get tired in the evening, and I almost pass out rather than fall asleep, and then I'm not aware. It's like I go into another dimension rather than sleep, and just the whole. I seem to always be dreaming throughout the night, and that might be because of spending so long in proximity to the box. But during the experiments, I would have people sleep right next to the box, and it completely changed the dreaming pattern of each person. They had totally different dreaming, like way different dreaming. Especially one guy who was ex-army, ex-navy, and he doesn't dream at all. And I wouldn't have asked. Well, it was hard to find people for the experiment because I was asking people to give up a whole day of their time, and or nearly a day at a time, not far off. And it was quite a demanding process. At least two of the participants were actually quite frightened of the process, and did it anyway, partly because they knew it was important to me. I think they pushed themselves, but I probably wouldn't have asked him if because I wanted the experiment to be successful, as any researcher does, and I would have thought, oh, gee, this guy is a liability because he doesn't dream at all, and he turned out to be one of the strongest, some of the strongest data in the whole experiment, like because he dreamt loads and he had really significant dreams, and all 10 sessions tied in, because I was doing a triple analysis of synchronicity. So the person asked a personal question, and so that was one aspect of the synchronicity. Did the question line up with what happened in the dream? The second aspect of synchronicity was the actual dream contents, and then before the person spent the night by the box, we ran a device that creates numbers from energy flows. It's from Eastern Europe, and it's an amazing device called an Egely wheel, Egely, and you can use the subtle energy from your hands to move the wheel, but an orgone energy field, you have to stack the energy field up in the right way. It's not particularly easy to do. It took me it probably took me a couple of years to find the best way to get the wheel to move on its own, and in the orgone field. And so the movement of the wheel the wheel goes past an electronic sensor, and each time a fin goes past the electronic sensor, it creates a beep. So I video the wheel, and then I count the beeps, which is absolutely laborious work, like especially some of the complex sets of numbers. I spent a whole day counting beeps. It drove me insane. So I get a set of numbers for each person. So I'm just counting the how many ways it is. It might be 4-way, because there was the question, the dream contents, the numbers, and synchronicities in the environment too. That I didn't know before I started. So it's actually a 4-way test of synchronicity, and there was 250 synchronicities overall. There was actually slightly more than that, because there was some that I didn't realize till after the experiment had been written up. But the amount of dreams and the amount of synchronicities were just way beyond what could be accounted for by chance. So
you can't deny the synchronicities.
Yeah, some of them were absolutely bizarre. Like there was one young woman who had her synchronicities all revolved around the number 2, and there was a dozen synchronicities just in her dream, and then I was getting all these synchronicities around the number 2 in my own life, just in my daily life. And it also, and the box itself used the rumbling sound to increase the synchronicities. Like the day after her session, the day before her session, I'd seen 2 of an unusual type of dog, 2 of a very unusual bird that you don't normally see in in an urban area, a huge bird called a buzzard, an English buzzard, and which took part in the whole experiment. There was these animals that interfaced with the experiment on a regular basis, and the buzzard was one of those, which I'd see in a graveyard nearby. There's a huge memorial garden stroke graveyard near here that all reflects the experiment. It's bizarre. It's like the person who planned it around the experiment from the 1800s. And the day after so I saw two of the buzzards the day before her session, because each session would take over my life for up to a week. And then the day after her session, the box started rumbling at 2:22, and that was her angel number. And I didn't know about her angel number until the following day when it came up by chance, because she was skeptical, I think, a little bit of the experiment, and she kind of held information back. But some of the information in her dreams was coded in a way that she didn't know, and so I would decode it, and then it would point to the twos again, like there was 2 times that came up in her dream, and she didn't know it was indicating the number 2 because it was being given in a digital way in her dream, because she's a young person. But then when I decoded it into analog time, it went back to the 2s again, and then like there was light and dark and 2 characters in her dream, and hot and cold. And so it was all about duality or 2s. I think I also bumped into 2 people that the participant knows in a supermarket at 20 minutes to 2. That was either the day before or the day after that session. So it was like I had no control over my own life at all. It was like my whole life was pre-planned. For the week of each session was, my life wasn't my own. It didn't happen in a bad way, because I wanted to do the experiment. It was just, I was where I should be and looking at things that I should be that had already been decided. I wasn't deciding things.
There was synchronicity, there was flow, it was enjoyable. You had annoying moments like the beeping that you had to tally and keep track of, but ultimately it was that life high and self-motivation, that drive from within, and you were responding to it, you know? And earlier when you were speaking, it crossed my mind that maybe the participants that you had who weren't really, keen at first, maybe it was because they were skeptical, but also maybe they were afraid. Often we procrastinate because we're afraid of our own success. It might have been scary for them to think like, what if I have a dream about something and then Leon actually tells me about it? That might be scary for them. And, I was going to ask you, go ahead.
Well, there was 2 people who were definitely scared. One, because she has quite intense dreams anyway, and she was worried that they get even more intense. And there was an older guy. Talking of this guy, even the ages of the participants corresponded. Like there was 2 participants who were 74 years old, one in both runs, because I did one run in the summer and one run in the winter. And the oldest participant in both runs was 74. And 74 is a number to word association for orgone, and one of the main geomatras for orgone that I happened to look up. And there was only one participant that was skeptical, because they were either friends or family or friends of friends, and so that young lady, I had a feeling, was a bit skeptical, and 2 were frightened a little bit. Another young lady, because of being worried about it enhancing her dreams, and the older guy was worried, and he'd hidden from himself his real question, and the dreams unveiled the real question, which he'd put a kind of airy fairy new agey question. I hope he's not listening to this. And his real question was about his fears around life and death, and about losing family, and also about karmic debts. And the dreams portrayed it exactly. It was amazing. Like, and I just couldn't make this stuff up. I wouldn't have the intelligence to do it. It's beyond my intelligence. If you read the full accounts, like, because it's written up in 3 places. There's the formal papers at there's only one orgone journal now that publishes right across the field. Like, there's 2 psychiatric orgone journals that are still going after decades, but there's one newish journal been going about 12 years or so, and it publishes like physical experiments as well as like psychiatric and social stuff. And the formal papers for the consciousness experiment are in there, Journal of Psychorgone, or it's at psychorgone.com, and the full accounts are on my Substack. And if you read through the full accounts, you'll see, like, it just, a human couldn't make all that stuff up.
That is amazing. At some point, I'll put it on screen share because I have in my bookmark all your links there as well. I wrote down rules of the mind when you were talking, because your mind's number one job is to protect you, even if it means lying to you and creating false inhibiting beliefs that keep you stagnant and stuck. And so people who have trauma in their life, or fears, false inhibiting beliefs, they bury it all away, and yet it comes out. It expresses itself like a rash all over your body. And you're like, why do I have this rash? And it's because you have a fear and it's coming out like that. But it also comes in the form of dreams, whether you even understand the dream or not. It's like you can't hide, even inside your mind, all that information is there, even if you try and bury it. So that's another reason why people might have been intimidated to work with you, because like, what about if you discover something really personal about me that ends up triggering me? And, it's very interesting. I'm going to have you back like at least 5 times, at least, like in the near future, because like, we're just talking about this box. We haven't even started talking about all the other stuff, right? So this is very fascinating. And I wanted to ask you too, like, so is this like translating into a dream dictionary, or is this like a case by case scenario? So the participant that had the connections about the number 2, is that specific to them, or can I take that information and apply it to me? How would that benefit?
Well, sometimes it was specific and sometimes it was general. Like, I did find out a lot more about the number 2. Like, the energy box seems to have a language that it prefers, and that this was another reason it took so many years to find a process that would work, because it seems to prefer the language of numbers. It doesn't like being. One time we tried to corral it into using English, and it did something really strange, and it doesn't seem to like being made to use English, because numbers are much more flexible. But partly through the dreams, I came to find out what the numbers specify for it. Like, the number 5 seems to often symbolize war for the box, and the number 12 seems to, I mean, a lot of them are cultural. Like, 12 is a cultural number for for the cosmos or for cycles. But certain numbers seem to come from orgonomy, like 15 is the mirror image of 51, which was in 1951 Wright discovered Oronor, and the first number in the experiment was 15. And also the sums, the sum of the first run was 255, and there was 2 runs with 5 people in each run. And then the sum of the second run was 3,255. So the second run referenced the sum of the second run referenced the sum of the first run, and it also referenced the principle of the second run, because most of the numbers were connected in the second run by the number of dreams. Like that everybody had a key number that came up in the way the wheel turned, and that key number was referenced by the number of dreams that they had generally in the second run. So the second run symbolized angel numbers, because the sum of the second run converts into an angel number of 555, because 3 + 2 is 5. 555 is the angel number principle of a triple digit principle. And also it references the Oronor rumble sound, which made all sorts of predictive rumbles. Like it would rumble at times that would encode predictive numbers for the experiment. So because the rumble is mostly at 32 hertz, and you had 3255, then the number of factors of 3255 is also 32 hertz, is also 32. If you include positive and negative numbers and the number itself, you get 32 factors. A factor is a number that divides into another number equally, like 2 is a factor of 8 because it divides into 8 4 times. And it mostly used factors and mirror numbers and gematria. It tended to use English gematria mostly. So that was like, I would discover like the number 14 came up as an important number, and that was related to the Navy guy. He had the number 14. It came up in his numbers very particularly. Like he had the highest number overall in the first run, which was 104, and he'd been involved in the Falklands War, and 104, if you take the 0 out, it becomes 14, and 14, 1 and 4 is 5, and 5 is the boxer's number for warfare, and he was involved in a war, and he was born, well, he lives near Liverpool, which is famous for the liver birds, and the liver birds are on top of the liver building, which looks out to the sea. So 14 symbolizes the liver building, because whoever built the liver building has all sorts of secret biblical Old Testament associations. And nowhere, I mean, I'm a Londoner, but I live in the Northwest, and no one else has mentioned that the liver building has Old Testament associations, because there's on top of the liver building, I mean, the liver building's shaped like an energy box. It's a rectangular box. It's the first skyscraper in Europe, amazingly, and it's got 10 floors. Well, it's got 10 real floors. They fabricate online and say it's got 13 floors, but the top 3 floors are only partial floors that lead up to the liver birds. They're huge, like reptilian Gothic birds on top of an egg at the top of this building. So his number 104 also symbolized the Liver building in two ways, because the first two digits are 10, and the Liver building's got 10 real floors. But it's also got 14 globes on top that are stacked in sets of 4. So on the outermost bit of the roof, you've got 4 globes. It's such an unusual building. I believe it's symbolic of the Ark of the Covenant, because the Ark of the Covenant has got 2 winged cherubim on it, and the Liver building has got 2 winged reptilian-looking birds. That they say that there's some I've forgotten the name for what they try and pass it off as, a griffin or something like that. But it's still 2 winged creatures on top of a rectangular box. And as well as that, the building itself references the Book of Enoch and the Old Testament, because you've got, and the New Testament, the first layer of the roof has got 4 globes in each corner, or eggs. They might be a partial egg or a globe. And then on the towers that support the birds, there's another 4 globes on each tower. So that's 4, 8, 12. So you've got 3 sets of 4s. So you've got the Trinity concept as well. And then I've only just realized that. I didn't put that in any of the papers. But then, thanks. And then each Liver bird is actually on a globe as well. So you've got 14 globes, and the number 14 is very biblical and very Enochian, because at the beginning of the Book of Enoch, he talks about 14 trees, maybe in Eden or somewhere, but the 14 trees are prominent right at the start of Enoch. And then in the Old Testament, you've got the 144 tribes, 144 of the elect in the tribes. And that corresponds to the building, because you've got 14 globes all overall. And you couldn't put 144 globes, but you can symbolize the number 144, because you've got 14 globes overall. And then you've got another set of 4 you've got 2 sets of 4. So you got 1 4 and an extra 4. So you got 144, which the zeros you can add in or take away as you please. Because like 0, it's very clever. The Boxer's language, 0 means loss and grief in the Boxer's language. Anyway, that's an aside. So the box has 140. The Liver building symbolizes 144 with its roof, and so that's in the Old Testament. That's the elect from the Jewish tribes, and then in the New Testament, that's the elect from Revelation, Book of Revelation, and it all tied in with his number 104. And then, of course, he went off by sea to be involved in a war. And I think the reason why the Boxer's chosen 5 as a war, apparently there's Mars connections with the number 5, which I didn't know about. Someone has mentioned that in a comment. But I took it because of the Pentagon, because most of the warfare in the last, well, I don't know, 50 to 250 years has had the Pentagon has been involved in some way or another in that.
That is phenomenal. We can do a show just on that. Everything you have to share is like a show respectfully on its own, right? Such a wealth of information. When you were describing it, I was imagining like pyramid shapes and sacred geometry and things like 4 pillars of foundation, because you want to have like 4 corners to have a box, but in truth the triangle is the strongest structure. And then I was thinking about things like you said, the Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Ghost, there's your 3 or repeated 3s. But then there was an emphasis on the 4 and the sacred geometry and the number 4 representing the 3D reality, like that we live in, the 4th dimension, I should say, not the 3rd dimension, but the 4th dimension. So that's very fascinating. I wonder, I wrote down lots of stuff here. Do you think that the skyscrapers, maybe not all of them, but maybe some of them that were first built long ago were the original boxes, but they couldn't, call it that, so they just called it skyscraper? But do you think maybe there was a double agenda going on? That it was a communication,
Yeah, it must have been a double agenda, because it's weird that it takes like a 50-something Londoner to point out something that every Liverpudlian should know, that the building that their city is most famous for is full of Old Testament references. And I've literally found it nowhere. It's nowhere on the internet that I know of. It's interesting that you bring up 4 and 8, because 4 is you brought up the number 4, and 8 is a double of 4. Because the number 4 is the number that represents orgone or orgonomy. And because what led to Reich's discovery of orgone was the 4-beat life formula, or sometimes known as the orgasm formula, and that led to the discovery of orgone. And the only number that I got experimentally from, because for ages I tried to find out one meaning for each number, and that didn't work. But the box always confirmed that the number 8 was the number for itself, and the number 4 and 8 are key for my work. And the pyramid, you're right about the pyramid shape being the strongest shape, and the triangular shape. And it's little known, but there's actually a connection between the Ark of the Covenant and the pyramid. And the Giza Plateau is known in the Old Testament. It's given another name. I don't know the name offhand. It might begin with a H, like Hanam or something like that. But for years, there was a ceremony where they took a replica of the pyramidion that went on top of the Giza pyramid, and they took that all the way to Mecca once a year during the medieval ages for hundreds of years. So and there's a connection between Mecca and Orono, the meteorite within the black box might be an Orono device. So all the religions, all the monotheistic religions, have connections through this energy. Like Islam, Judaism are both connected through Orono. In fact, you could say that the origins of Judaism are within Orono, and that perhaps the Hebrews might have taken that technology from Egypt, and the Egyptians might have got it from the Atlanteans or off planet. But Orono technology is like the technology of the cosmos.
That's what I was just going to ask. So, it's rooted in all these ancient cultures, ancient cosmology, ancient beliefs. But at heart, do you feel it's because people felt that they were speaking to God, or they were speaking to some kind of ET, and that's what drew them in? And because people who are power hungry, control hungry, they don't like that. That's why this was all became like forbidden knowledge, secret knowledge. Why were they so obsessed?
I think with the Hebrews originally, they believed they were talking to God, and the original use of the ark was purely communication, and they probably felt that gave them the edge, that they had that they didn't just rely on channeling, which takes me back to the dreams. That's one of the reasons the experiment is quite strong, is because there's no conscious mind intervening in the dreams. It's pure from yourself. It's not something you can edit, and that's one of the strengths of the experiment. But going to back to the Hebrews, I think they did believe they were talking directly to God, and that they had a better technology for doing that than the tribes around them, who might rely on the fallibility of someone channeling information. Like, you don't know who you're channeling, and you don't know how much is going through your conscious mind and how much is not. Whereas the Hebrews had a technology for doing that.
This might be a good time to ask this question. So this question I wrote down like right away, but I wasn't sure how to answer it. So this is good synchronicity. Okay, so earlier, like, 5 minutes into the show, you were talking about how the rumbling sound, any voices, if you will, it's a communication that comes in the head. It's not a voice you hear outside. It's not a voice you hear with your ears. It's inside your head. And I wrote down channeling. I wrote down schizophrenia. I wrote down ETs. I wrote down God. Ultimately, folks back in the day were vulnerable because they had a belief it was God, and or maybe it was too scary for them to think that it might be an ET and or humans that evolved or something like that. But how do we know? Like, because it crossed my mind. I forget the gentleman's name, the deceased experimenter, Rich, that your work is based on.
Right, yeah.
Yes. Do you feel like maybe he's like part of this rumbling noise? Like, who's the rumbling, and is it the same rumbling from that the Hebrews and whatnot were hearing back in the day? Like, how do we identify?
Well, I think the rumbling is controlled by a higher consciousness, a higher intelligence. I mean, I've tried everything to precipitate it: radioactivity, sunlight, artificial light, microwaves, radio sounds, heat, energy movement, people movement. I've tried static electricity. Nothing works. It just rumbles when it chooses to. Sometimes.
Do you feel like it's? Go ahead.
It's okay. So sometimes it will rumble if I ask it to. If I ask it to rumble, it will rumble within 24 hours. Not always, but it will respond to consciousness in that way. And then it's totally it's very non-random, the way that the times that it chooses will tie in with other times. Like it even called Trump a name. It called Trump the angel of 13 on the 11th of April. Well, it rumbled and it encoded the number 13 3 times, and that worried me because I knew that 13 was a number for destruction or chaos, and I thought, what does this mean? It's not good. And then 2 days later, on the 13th, Trump encoded the number 13 3 times. And he definitely knew what he was doing. I mean, people who say Trump's not clever, he chose the 13th to encode the number 13 twice. So on the 13th of April, he took 2 McDonald's bags and got a McDonald's delivered on TV cameras to the White House. Like, who's ever heard of a president giving McDonald's a free advert? But that was only part of what he was doing. He was encoded the number 13 because M is 13, So 2 bags is 2 times 13. And he chose the 13th day to encode that number. So three encodes of 13. And the box had predicted this 2 days earlier. So I've forgotten why I've gone on to that. But what was the original question?
Well, I was asking you, like, how do we know who we're talking to? Like, is it a
Right.
ghost? Is it a spirit guide? Is it even an AI, you know?
Well, that brings me to my friend who thought it was an AI. He thought it might be some kind of entity, or he had doubts about it. And then this is where we found out that it doesn't really like talking in English, because I've got a method where you can dowse with the energy box and it overrides your mind in a way. And he dowsed a name and in English, and it looked like gobbledygook, complete nonsense. And he thought, oh, this doesn't work. This obviously shows this is just Leon being a loony. And so he had a six letter name of complete gobbledygook. And then he Googled it, and there was one single Google research, one single Google return on that search. And it just happened to be an AI researcher who was interested in optical tubes. And probably the only person in the world who has that name, and he is also an AI researcher using optical tubes. And he was dowsing over a tube in a device that he thought was an AI device, possibly. But so that confirmed to me, no, the box doesn't like talking in English, and that's not the path to go down. Because maths is so, like, there's a reason why the person who influenced Plato the most was Pythagoras, I believe. And Pythagoras was universally admired amongst the philosophers of the time. And he believed that maths was the highest communication, and the box does as well. So I stick to maths, because, like, the number 4 can mean the earth, it can mean the compass directions, it can mean the life formula of Reich, it can mean orgone, it can mean orgonomy. You're not stuck with a number, it's always fluid. And whereas English language is very, like, it's got set meanings. But the reason why I believe there's a higher power, well, there's 2 reasons I believe a higher power is communicating through the box and not just any lower entity, is because, one, my intentions were very pure. Like, my intention all along was to uncover the missing link of the science of orgone, which is called orgonomy. The missing link is that, what is the connection between subtle energy and consciousness? And so there wasn't any ego or self-interest involved. So my intention was just purely that, because I just love science. I like finding new things, and maybe my interests are broadening out from science. It might not always just be science, but I love finding new stuff and exploring and finding something that no one's done before. That's why I was attracted to doing experiments that no one had done before, like the orgone acupuncture and the other stuff were kind of new, though they were pre-runners, but it was the first, like, full-scale experiment in that, to look at orgone and acupuncture. The Germans got there first, of course. But I've gone off the track. That the other reason why I felt it's a higher power through the box is because I did actually hear a voice a number of times partly during the early days of the Orinor experiment, and then about 2 years before the consciousness experiment, I heard this very powerful voice that talked about a Bible passage, and then I got given an extra line from Psalm 139, and so I think that, well, that's why I think it's a higher power, and also just the level of it seems to have a beneficial or a good intention to it, and the power of that voice I heard was exceptionally strong, and it also made a prophecy, and that prophecy's come true totally. So yeah, I feel that mainly the function of the pyramid, and the ark, and my box are all to do with conversing with a higher power.
Skyscrapers and whatnot from long ago. A pyramid could be an early version of a skyscraper. We really don't know, there's so much to discover out there. And I'm just soaking up every moment of this. I wrote down all kinds of notes here. I feel like there needs to be both, because math is literacy. Literacy is math, and there's a time and place for one or the other. And I feel like in this kind of situation, like we're a stories, are our medicine. We need a beginning, a middle, and an end, but that progression, if you will, can still be described through number symbolism. Things multiplying, subtraction, addition, that can represent that. We see increasing patterns, growing patterns. But what got my attention was, I feel like maybe in this situation, for somebody doing research like yourself, if the source that was communicating with you was providing words, that might get too confusing, because we would start getting stuck in stories. And I'm feeling like you're being provided with numbers and algorithms because you have to interpret that and put a story to it so that people like me can understand it. Because somebody like me, I can't understand this kind of stuff. Like, I mean, I can buckle down and try and study it. But for somebody like you to take the math and translate it, just like you were doing with the number 2 with one of your participants, and that the man with the number 14 in the Navy, like all of that to me is really powerful, because that's what you got through numeracy. So I just can't say enough about that. And then the number 14 is special for me too, because when I was 39, turning 40, or actually when I was 40, turning 41, I wrote my book and I called it 40 going on 14, because that mirror reflection. And it had to do with me, because basically when I was 15, I started working. And then when I was 14, I struggled with math and literacy. I was too intimidated. I had a hard time reading. So tarot cards, that was appealing to me. A little card with a few sentences. It was very inspiring. The information on the cards was beneficial for me to read. But a point to be made that when I turned 15, all of that hit the back burner. And it wasn't until I turned like 41 where this kind of stuff, I was able to return to that. So that was special to me. I found myself relating, even though it was somebody else's story. And being in the Navy, I kind of felt like that too, like in a completely different way. It was like when I was 15, I went off to war, in the sense that I had to like go to the real world and work and give up my life. And then when you were talking about Trump and the number 13, the number 13, I have mixed emotions about that, because I like the divine feminine connections that go with it. But I get what you're saying too, like the negative connotations that have to, the context of the number 13. But going back to numbers, when do you know to take the number 13 and just leave it at the number 13? When do you know to go, oh yeah, 1 + 3 = 4? because I thought the number 4 was a special number. And then it made me feel hopeful about maybe what Trump is doing with the number 13. And then it made me think things of duality and yin yang, because maybe the number 13 is the number 4. It just depends on the perspective that you need. And I have tons more to say, but any thoughts about anything I've said so far?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's a lot of cultural stuff that the energy box sometimes uses. Like the number 7 didn't come up an awful lot, and like 7 is traditionally thought to be a really spiritual number. Sorry about the dog, but the number 7 wasn't huge in the experiment, and the number, well, I've lost my track a little bit here. Yep. I mean, you're the 13. So you've actually got 13 signs in the zodiac, and 13 can be quite a positive number. Like there's no negative numbers. Like you've got the 12 disciples and the governing principle, which would be like Christ. And so 13's got every number has positive aspects. Like people think 7 is a very holy number, but if you look in the book of Revelation, 7 features throughout the book of Revelation as a key number, and the book of Revelation is just a horror fest. And so it's say take one New Testament number, that 666, that is thought to be, I mean, it's got some negative gematria that's tied up with it, but overall in the Old Testament it just means energy accumulation, because 666 is a triangular number. Like the number 6 is a triangular number, and because if you take 6 objects, it will form a pyramid. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and 1. So you've got a triangle from the number 6. So that's what a triangular number is. And 666 is also a triangular number. But the reason it was chosen in the Old Testament is because it represents the Giza pyramid. And well, this is my theory on it. And the Giza pyramid collects energy and transfers it upwards. So King Solomon had 666 talents of gold delivered a year in tax. So that was a symbolic number, signifying, it was symbolizing the accumulation of great wealth and wisdom by correlating his tax collection with the Giza pyramid. And then I believe the book of Revelation was quite influenced by the Romans, and they took what was a little known positive Jewish number and made it into a really negative number in the New Testament. So it's a lot to do with connotations, but numbers do have an energy. Like primary numbers are selfish, because a primary, and it's funny that primary numbers are the key thing in financial transactions, in encoding financial transactions. But a primary number is kind of selfish because it will only relate to itself and the number 1. So it will only relate to unity and itself. It ignores everything else. But say the number 12, the number 12 represents the cosmos, because we've got 12 houses in astrology, 12 disciples of Jesus, 12 months in a year. And the number 12 splits 3 times into the number 4. So and the number 4 represents the earth because of the compass. So the number 4 and the number 12 are best buddies, and the number 4 and the number 8, for number 4 for orgone for the life formula, and the number 8 for orinal or energized orgone, they're best buddies too, and both of them fit into the number 12. Like 8 goes into 12 1.5 times, and so you got lots of relationships. Or even the number 15, like you were 40 going on 41, and I guess that you realize that 41 is the mirror of 14. Yeah, and the first, so going on to like 15, like 15 was the first number of the orgone experiment, and the mirror of 51, which was 1951. When so the energy box has 2 numbers for orinal. It has the number 8 for itself, and the number 15 and the number 51 for orinal. But just jumping back to what you said about narratives and stories, it's actually quite easy to read the full experiment accounts, because there's a story for each person. So you've got 10 stories that are lived out through the dreams, and that was partly why it took a whole day for each experimental session, because the person would come here about 7 o'clock in the evening. We'd do a 5-minute meditation, get the numbers, and then we'd have a meal and we'd chat, and I'd get like background information for 2 or 3 hours on the people I didn't know that well, and that would help me interpret the dreams, because some people use different types of dream symbology. Which reminds me, there was another totally new paranormal phenomena or psychic phenomena, in that twice during the experiments there was a hybrid of an outer body experience in a dream, and I've never heard of OBE hybrids with dreams before. I've read a few of Robert Monroe's books, and he may have mentioned it somewhere, but I don't recall. Twice there was one really dramatic outer body experience stroke dream. Well, I call it a hybrid because it's got elements of an outer body experience where the person is actually viewing the environment that they're in from outside their body, and then the energy field adds in dream elements to the outer body experience, which I've never heard of before, and twice that happened in the experiments. One in a very benign, minor way, and one in a quite terrifying way. But and both of those experiments fitted in. Both of those dream narratives were also key to the numbers and the meanings of the dreams.
That is so fascinating. When you were talking, I thought, wouldn't it be fun if the box could communicate in color, or if you could hook up a piano to it, and then you can get to learn like doodle-doo means like this or something, and just I think that would be really cool. I don't know.
I did think of something along those lines of having, if I had it set up so that I maybe had because originally I was thinking of hooking it up to a large language model, AI, so you'd get a continual number stream coming out of the energy field, and then having that number stream go through a traditional AI and creating language. But then I realized that people wouldn't credit, because however similar, because there used to be a thing called I can never remember this guy's name. He was one of the early mathematicians that founded. His work led to AI. He was part of the he helped decode the German code breakers in World War II, and he thought that if a computer can have a conversation with a human and be believable, then that indicates it's conscious. But now no one even thinks about that test, and because computers have passed that long ago, and so however human-like an AI becomes in its conversation, people still won't believe it. So I thought that would be so that's why I started looking into dreams and direct communication between people and an energy field, and have developed this protocol, because you can get numbers from an energy field, and then you can put people in an energy field and ask them to communicate directly with that energy field. So the dream is a direct interface, and then you can compare the dream with the numbers and see if there's correlation. And it would be interesting also to make music directly, because you could change the you could take the energy field's perturbations and change them into notes, or you could even try using the sound directly, but it's so hard to predict and it tends to be at one tone, or occasionally it's not at one tone. Actually, it has a main tone at 32 hertz, or 29 to 32 hertz to be exact, but then it also has lesser tones at about 60 odd hertz and 100 hertz, and there might be something going on at about 500 to 1000, but the main one is at 32.
And animals like dogs, because you have a dog and the dog was barking earlier. I was wondering, like, is that because the dog is picking up on the box? Because dogs can hear things that we can't hear, right? Like those little whistles that people train their dogs with and stuff. So does it impact, is it Snow? I forget the dog's name. Snowy?
Snow.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he does go in and lie by, like, because when the box started rumbling, I was actually meditating by the box, and it started rumbling. And Snow's quite independent dog. He likes to, I think, see his tail there. He likes to think of himself as a bit of a guard dog, and he came and cuddled up to the box while it was rumbling. So I think he does sense stuff, and he tried to take part in the experiment at one point, and he was in one of the participants' dreams, but he physically took part in by jumping onto the bed when the person was sleeping, and the person he entered into their dream as a character, and then got pushed off the bed and exited quite quickly. But
because I wonder if the box has to compete with other consciousnesses. Like, I wonder if the box has ever felt like maybe Snow is trying to communicate, and the box is like, no, it's my turn to communicate, or something like that. I just find all of this so fascinating. Earlier, when you were talking about the number 666, I mean, right away, I think the devil, the Satan, 666, it's an evil number. But I actually have notes upside down. I literally have notes everywhere. But I put, you mentioned that 666 translates into energy accumulation. And I thought, because when I think about my energy medicine training, we call it stale chi, hard energy, crystallized energy. And my understanding is some people, like, we just all have energy around us, but sometimes it doesn't clear out and it just kind of stays. And then over lifetime after lifetime, we carry it with us, and it actually transforms into an ailment. Like we start feeling back pain or whatever because that's stale energy. And it made me think about how parasites, pain, anything negative is associated with the devil. And I thought, like in Gina world, it was fun for my mind to play with that. But Have you ever thought about that? The number 666 and stale chi, crystallized energy. Maybe it doesn't mean anything to you.
Well, there was a strange connection with Orinor with that, because the I the because the first Orinor experiment had quite a lot of. I mean, it was partly because of Wilhelm Reich, who discovered orgone. That you can pronounce if you pronounce it in the German way, it's Reich, but the English tend to pronounce it Reich, and the his people never. There was some Germans who did a partial. No, not sorry, it's not Germans. There was some Spanish physicists who did a partial repeat of his work in the 90s, but they didn't do a full Orinor repeat because they didn't have a strong energy accumulation. They had a very weak energy accumulation and a very tiny amount of radioactivity. Whereas I had a very strong, similar to Reich's level of orgone accumulation, but I took 1,000th of the radioactivity. And I also introduced the radioactivity gradually. So I had a double method of not getting the effects that Reich had. And Reich had like quite extreme effects because he was overconfident that the orgone would overpower the radioactivity. So he didn't monitor it very closely the first day. And then because he was expecting the orgone to overpower the radioactivity easily, he carried on for 8 days, even though the effects got worse and worse, until after the 8th day, he had no choice but to shut it all down, and the labs were not usable for a couple of years. And that's also another connection to the number 8, because Wright continued the Orinor experiment for 8 days, which is a strange time to choose, and really he shouldn't have done. It wasn't sensible of him in a way, but if he had been sensible, he wouldn't have discovered the Orinor effect fully, and it affected all the way up to Canada, because he was in the northern part of the US on the western side in Maine, above New York, and the radioactive effects went all the way up to Canada, which is documented in mainstream newspapers. And there was also weather effects around the labs that went out a couple of miles, and nature effects, as well as all the things that happened to the doctors around there. So, and the other research assistants. So it was understandable that no one wanted to repeat the experiment for a long time.
And you know what? That's the sign of evolution, the sign of change. No different than birds having babies, cycle after cycle. And then there's that one bird that's born and seemingly it's deformed, when really that's a flash forward of what the future is going to look like, the future generation, you know? Okay, I made some notes about the number 8. Maybe it's a good time to go back to that. So earlier when you were talking about the number 8, and the number 4, my mind was like, oh, the rainbow spectrum, red, orange, yellow, green. And then I thought about the heart chakra. So I was wondering, are chakras connected to this? Because chakras are little energy centers. They're keys, doorways. So any thoughts on that? And then I have more about the number 8.
Sure. Shall I just, I forgot to add in the key detail from that. So that there was actually, when I repeated the experiment in 2017, I didn't realize till afterwards, but it was 66 years and 6 months between my experiment and Reich's experiment. So that symbolized energy accumulation. And the number 8 was the only number I was given experimentally. And every time I asked, what is the number for yourself, it gave me the number 8, and it would say like 88888, and every time I did that, it was always the number 8, because every other number meaning has come up gradually, like the knowing that 0 meant grief and loss. I didn't realize that until participant number 10, and a lot of her story was around loss and grief, and all the stories interconnected with my own life. Like I was having very intense Orinor dreams about my own father who'd passed away, and a key aspect of her session was about a grief that her father had, and some of the participants knew each other, and the numbers of the participants that knew each other were connected, and so some of the participants were connected via, well, the 2 youngest participants also had a connection in their numbers, and anybody who had a friendship between them had particular connections between their numbers.
That's good synchronicity, because I wanted to talk about this a while ago now, but just the way the conversation shifted. But now, synchronicity at hand, we needed to talk about other stuff first. So now I get it. So I got so many notes here. So what did I write? Your 2 same. I can't read my writing. Okay, maybe that'll make sense later. But the number 0 really struck me, because I didn't even think about the number 0. When I think about the number 8, I think about infinity. And earlier you mentioned sexual metaphors. I don't know where my note went, but sexual metaphors in nature, that came up. Orgasm equals sexual metaphors in nature. And just the connections to what this box seems to represent and want to connect with, and how we're all one. It just seemed to me like there was a strong biological, natural connection, but I'm having a hard time expressing myself here. There's something special about the number 8 versus the Venn diagram, because the Venn diagram is 2 circles that come together, right? And then you have that in-between space, which is the I, where everything exists. But then when you have the number 8, this is, for me personally, where sexualized metaphors come in. So you've got the number 1, the 0, binary codes, penis, vagina, masculine, feminine. But in truth, the number 1 could bend to create a 0, or the number 1 can open, so also this here just reminds me of things that you're talking about, because you're talking about putting ideas together, all of these circles, and then they create this Venn diagram where there's this interconnectedness, and yet the Venn diagram in itself is somewhat of an illusion, because depending on your perspective, is it a Venn diagram, or is it simply 2 circles and you're looking at it with a certain angle, that those 2 lines that make it a cylinder, those 2 lines aren't even there. It's like an illusion that they're there. So this made me think about duality. What is, isn't, what isn't, is. We're one and the same, and yet we're broken up into a collective. And then it makes me, like, when you're speaking, I always picture papers folding up, papers unfolding. I find this to be very fascinating, and I wrote another note, but I can't read it for the life of me. But any thoughts on that, on the number 8 and references to infinity, and then this business of the Venn diagram and greater oneness? And do you feel like there's a connection with the number 8?
Yeah,
and the Venn diagram.
Yeah, there is, for sure. I think partly why the higher energy that's communicating through the box, in my view, chose number 8. It's also, well, the number 8 is encoded throughout this cemetery nearby, where I saw the buzzard birds, and there's an Egyptian monument there that encodes the number 17 throughout. Like it has 17 Ankhs and 17 owls on it, and 17 is a gematria for the higher power. It's a common numerological gematria for God, and 1 and 7 is 8, and everything in that graveyard is there's an 8-sided war memorial cross that is in octagons, and the top of the chapel in the it's a huge graveyard. It's got it's not that old. It's only from like mid 1800s, but it's huge. It's got war sections, Catholic sections, Protestant. It's even got a non-conformist section, which is where the Egyptian monument is, which shows they were really quite open-minded when they built that. But everything's based around 8, like that. There's an 8-sided tower, and funny enough, one of Robert Monroe's research building, they've got an 8-sided tower as well, which is a strange connection. And I think it also chose 8 because, as you say, the symbol for eternity is an 8. And on its side, and the Wilhelm Reich, the number 4 led to the discovery of orgone, because Reich knew that Freud's libido drive, or the life drive. Reich knew that it was based on some kind of energy, and he knew that the main characteristic of energy is pulsation. And so he was studying pulsation in animals and in microbiology, and he found that this formula, which he called the life formula, which is tension, charge, discharge, relaxation, and every biological and plasmatic entity, because Reich didn't, there's a lot known about plasma now that wasn't known in those days. Like I think plasma's halfway between orgone and matter, but so every plasmatic and biological entity pulsates, and all that pulsation goes through that 4-stage process of tension, charge, discharge, and relaxation, and that became the orgasm formula. And it's also encoded in Chinese thought, because you got tension, charge, peaks, and then goes down, and that's the sine wave, which if you take a circle and put a sine wave through it, you've got the yin yang symbol. And the yin yang symbol, in my orgone and acupuncture study, I've got a 3D symbol, a 3D version of the yin yang symbol, and the yin yang symbol is a bion when you look at it in 3D. So 4 is a number of the earth, and that's partly why the box is revered in Islam and Judaism, because 4 is a very solid earth-like, Saturnian, because it's about rules and solid edges and laws and conventions. And so you've got earth-like energies, and orgone created the earth. The ether, or the orgone, like ether is a term the Victorians used for the underlying primeval soup that gives rise to matter, and then that was falsely thrown out in the 1900s, and with fraudulent interpretations. The actual research was not very well conducted, but it wasn't fraudulent. It was fraudulently interpreted, and that led to throwing out ether. And then one of the people who was credited with dismissing ether, Michelson, actually proved ether existed later on. And then there was even better evidence from a guy called Miller, because the original ether experiments were conducted in a basement, which because Newton thought, he didn't like the idea of Newton because of ether, because it conflicted with his theological views of God. So he didn't think there could be a moving ether in a God-created universe. But the ancients and the Victorians all did believe in a moving ether, and Descartes believed in ether. But ether creates matter, and then the matter comes to be the universe we inhabit. And so the number 4 is very about this universe we live in. And then the number 8 is when that energy gets energized further.
Right. That's a phenomenal answer. And you answered and made connections to other things I made, because as soon as you said pulsation, I was like, there you go. It's one thing to have a dirty mind and to be thinking sexual things and relating things to sex, but when it comes to like sexual metaphors in literature, and apparently in this research field that you're doing, the sexual metaphors are very much alive, because basically what you're describing is reflective of an orgasm, where there's like an escalation and then it goes down and then it relaxes and there's a process. And so there it is again, orgasm coming up again. And then the what else did I write here? The number 8, like the thing that I didn't talk about earlier, but you brought it up, which is in alignment with my own dream world and Gina's world of understanding, is back to that number 8, the infinity sign. So the number 8 respectfully could be a 0, but the 0 gets twisted to make an 8. It's distinctly not a Venn diagram. It's not 2 circles coming together. It's one circle that got twisted. And then you have, in theory, 2 equal sides, right? Representative of duality, black, white, whatever you want. But it makes me think of yin yang and this pulsation, because the one side, the one circle, might need to get bigger for whatever reasons, and that would default this circle to getting smaller. And then there might be another scenario that unfolds where this circle now needs to get bigger and this one gets smaller. So this reminds me of alchemy, the yin yang, the ebb and flow. Indigenous folks describe this as like a weaving, because there's like give, take, and as you give, take, it's the life, death, life cycle, the growth and the rebirth, the carrying of the high quality items forward, conscious evolution as we know it. And so, again, I'm fascinated here about that. And I did write down Carl Jung, Joseph Campbell a while ago, and I'm not surprised that it looped back to that as well. So I have 4 more notes written down here. I don't know how much more time you have, but any thoughts on anything that I said, or about, like, I don't know, anything that I just said about the number 8 in this twisting business? Does it bother you that I'm like, it's twisted, it was a circle? Because I don't have a science background. So thank you for having the patience for me to formulate my questions as they're in my mind congregating simultaneously. Any thoughts about the twisting of the number, of the 0 twisting into an 8, one side getting bigger, smaller? Thoughts on that?
Sure. Yeah, that's interesting. That's given me a couple of new perspectives, because I hadn't thought about the yin yang and the dualistic aspects of the number 8, and I hadn't thought about the number 8 in 3D either, and that reminded me, took me back to the Russians have been, the science research in the West has been very schizophrenic, because they've hidden the ether. They've had to have a 2-track research, because the higher echelons know that there's a missing element to mainstream physics, so that they've had a 2-track science or 2-track physics. But in Russia, it's not, apart from 1 or 2 years here and there, it's been integrated more, and it's not been suppressed in the same way. And so they've known about orgone and subtle energy for quite some time, and been, first they called it bioplasma in the 60s and 70s and 80s perhaps, but then around about the 90s they started calling it torsion energy. And torsion energy made me think, if you took a zero and twisted it, you're applying torsion to it, because that's one of the key characteristics of subtle energy is that it moves things, and it's the prime mover in a way, which I guess that may be why Newton wasn't keen on the idea of a dynamic ether, because the people who tested ether in the late 1800s, they looked for a static ether in a basement, which is just about the worst place you can possibly look, and the ether is not static, it's dynamic. And then later on, Michelson found evidence for a dynamic ether, and then his student Miller found even higher quality evidence on Mount Wilson, I think it was. But
hey, Leon, point of clarification. When you say dynamic, do you mean dynamic energy? Like if I was riding on a ski-doo or a boat and I started going this way because the waves or something, and then I need to move my body, dynamic energy to get it this way. Is that what you mean when you say dynamic?
Yeah, kind of. So it moves. It's not like the ether that Newton thought exists was just because Newton's work was on a background of non-time and nothingness. So atoms moved in this nothingness, and he thought if there was this dynamic moving ether, that would somehow take away from the job of God. So like God is the prime mover. So if you've got this energy field that is the prime mover, then from Newton's point of view, that lessened God's role in the universe, because God must be the prime mover. But in actual fact, God can work through whatever he chooses. And it looks like and now currently, because we've dismissed the ether, but we've got this nonsense of light moves in a total nothingness of vacuum, and then they keep on reinventing the ether but taking away some of its qualities. Like now they admit that particles can just pop out of nothingness, and they admit that this nothingness can create plasma, and the plasma can create dust. And so, and that's partly why they're so attached to the idea of light being a constant speed, because they believe that light travels through this nothingness, but it doesn't travel through nothingness. It travels through an ether, and that ether can minutely affect the speed of light. So the speed of light isn't totally constant. It's impacted by a medium that it travels with, but the medium is very thin, and so the light appears almost constant.
So it's almost like the light is following like a roller coaster, this dynamic energy where it just defaults to loops and rolling around, and who needs God if the dynamic energy will do that? I can appreciate why that would be conflicting with somebody's theology or personal beliefs about things. But that's what's supposed to make science and research exciting, right? And that's our problem, getting hung up on our own theories and beliefs too. Okay. So I haven't showed your website yet or anything, but anytime you need to go, you just let me know, Leon, because I can always show people your website and that, like after you leave or whatever. But okay, so what else was I going to say here? Oh, go ahead. Oh.
Yeah, I could probably do with popping off in the next like 10 minutes,
Okay,
5-10 minutes, because the
sure.
uh, uh, the
We've been
snow
going for
you
almost 2 hours, so I want to
yeah
make sure I'm not tiring you out. You're also 4 or 5 hours ahead of me, so it's almost 3:30 here, much later for you. Um,
well,
okay,
Snow's not had
so
his dinner yet, so he's probably thinking, when's
uh-oh.
this guy gonna feed me? Uh,
um,
but, Newton's,
two
just
two
going back to
comments
Newton.
for you.
Yeah,
The light in the background.
yeah,
So um, there's a famous painting of an ET that basically just
mm,
looks like a light, and the
yeah,
ET is shaped very skinny at the bottom and then wider at the top, but it just kind of looks
mm,
like a diamond shape,
mm,
and that's what that keeps reminding me of. And so I was
mm.
wondering, I wonder if there's a connection between the box and the light and just the literal equipment, with perhaps early depictions of ETs and spirits, because maybe that's what they were seeing was like a literal light bulb, but they perceived it as an angel ET. And then I got another thought for you. Any thoughts on
Well,
that? Just the
um,
physical.
yeah. Well, orgone is actually a cold, dark energy, like in its natural state. It's light is like an excitation of orgone, and particles are a condensation and excitation of orgone. So orgone in its natural state is cold and quiescent, or it probably just undulates and is dark. And when you squeeze the darkness, it becomes particles and electric effects. So if you if you take if you go into a dark room, like this is something that I've read about but not properly done myself, is that if you go into a completely dark room and get very strong orgone accumulation, you can actually see it. In you might see uh, uh, vapors, and like you can do it with crystals as well. If you get a completely light-proof room and sit there with a large crystal, after about an hour, you'll see like a flame coming off the top of the crystal. But if you look at if you go to the journal, uh, there's a plasma researcher that I've written a couple of uh, papers with, and one is about orgone bioforms, and the other is about paranormal phenomena at Psychorgone Journal. Uh, and if you look at those, that's PSYCH orgone.com, and the me and Nick Hayes, we wrote a double paper on the orgone plasma bioforms, and a double paper on orgone and paranormal phenomena. And there's 3 people who've visualized orgone uh, in glass tubes. Like if you get a very strong condensation of orgone in a glass tube, you can make it glow like a vacuum tube. And I used a plasma ball, a glass that is used for discos, like the electrical lighting effect. And I orgone charged that, well, I Orinor charged it when it was very high Orinor levels. And then I managed to photograph a strange blue glow from that. And then Reich and James DeMeo both photographed blue glows coming from vacuum tubes. So you can visualize the orgone directly. And there was a guy in Austria called Reichenbach. He was he kind of independently discovered orgone, and particularly its visual effects, and in the late 1800s in Austria. And the thing he was best at was visualizing. He made an orgone darkroom like Wilhelm Reich did, and Well, Wilhelm Reich made an orgone darkroom, and Reichenbach used light sealed rooms and orgone accumulating metals and crystals, and he managed to directly, the sensitives could see the crystal light coming off metals. Like he put one end of the metal in the sun and he put the other end of the metal in this dark room, and sensitives could see like a crystal light coming off the metal. So if any people out there have access to a completely light sealed room, then you can do those experiments yourself. It can take up to a couple of hours because there's two types of sight. There's the sight where you see material matter, atomic matter, which is a kind of more hard type of sight. And there's a soft type of sight where you see energy, and you can, like I can see orgone sometimes. I can see orgone on people's auras, and I can see the little orgone dots that dance about, particularly in high energy situations, and or at the end of cloud busting tubes. You can train yourself to have soft vision, but if you've got a light sealed room that you have access to, and you can get hold of some orgone accumulators or strong crystals, then you could visualize it directly.
That's really cool that you can just do that, because you don't have to have a lot of fancy science equipment. You really could just work with what you have, talk to some people, garage sales, see what's around,
Yeah.
So earlier you were talking about how scientists were admitting that things that seemingly don't exist do exist. It just comes out of nowhere. Like when we were talking about the dynamic energy. And it reminded me about colors, because the color white is in truth all of the colors. And when you have the primary colors, like, red and blue make green, then it's like green was always there, but you had to bring it together, the red and the blue. But in truth, red and blue come from the white light. So green is part of that white light. And so when you were talking about how it can just kind of pop in, pop out anywhere, I was thinking about that, how the color green basically, or a secondary color like the color purple or yellow or orange, those secondary colors kind of pop in, pop out. But in truth, they're all part of that step one. So I just thought that was cool.
Yeah, and like everything can come out of this, like you got the zero, which is like the nothingness in Kabbalah, but the nothingness is really not nothing. It's the underlying energy. It's just in a relaxed state, and then you add that torsion twist, and it becomes the 8 for the orinal, which is the energized. So if you energize the apparent nothingness, it becomes a very substantial energy, or an energy that creates substance.
And this popping in, popping out business, I've said it before, we have to have you back. Like, I can talk to you all day long, literally, but it's like, it reminds me of people who experience multi-dimensional lives. Like Julia Ankerhaven is very open about a different aspect of herself. I forget the name offhand now. It'll come to me later on. But like Kit Kat or something is the name. And it's like a part of her from a different place. And so I think like your comment earlier about like a hybrid dream, like maybe there was some of that going on, some kind of bouncing around where a different universe aspect, I don't want to get hung up on categories, but a different world, if you will, popped in this world, popped in my mind, gave me those ideas, provided me with information in my dreams. I think that's really fascinating to think about. And then this business conversation earlier about how in the dream life, all the information is there, but that one client you had with the number 2, she didn't understand the symbols in her dreams until you analyzed them with her. And it made me think about Robert Moss, because he writes a book called Sidewalk Oracles. And I actually thought it was an oracle deck when I ordered it. And then I got a book in the mail and I'm like, what? And it's all like fun activities that you can do. And he talks about like the dream life and bridging of worlds and whatnot. And
Yeah, that sounds interesting.
But basically sidewalk oracles, he's advocating that all the answers are out of your head. They're in your head, but they're also out of your head, because out of your head is the dream world too. So when you just look at the world around you, you don't know the synchronicities because you're not awakened to them. But once you awaken and start learning, then it's like the same thing that you're applying to that girl in the dream, you're applying to the world around you. So I find that so fascinating. And I'm just kind of speed talking now because I'm trying to get it all in. But it also fascinated me a long time ago when you were talking about how your smartphones in particular, the duality of having both of them and tag teaming to record the information, the comment that you made that the smartphone can hear your heartbeat or stomach noises that are going on. That fascinated me because I don't know my technology. It could be a smartphone Apple product. It looks like a watch, but it measures your heartbeat. And in the morning, it tells you how many times you woke up in the middle of the night. Do you know what I'm talking about? Because I feel like, can you transform that watch into a box and then you just wear it all the time with you and have like a buddy system to communicate? And what are your thoughts? Maybe I'll leave that as a final question, because I really could go on. I thoroughly enjoyed having you today as a guest, and even behind the scenes when we were chatting, I really enjoyed your time. But what are your thoughts about this watch? Like, or can you invent something like that?
Well, there is an equivalent in the Bible. There was a device called the ephod that you wore, which was an orgone blanket. This is one of the many orgone devices in the Bible, and it was a layered metal and fabric breastplate with 12 crystals, I think, embedded in it, and that was supposed to allow remote communication with the Ark. So whoever wore the ephod could communicate at a distance with the Ark, and that was part of the somewhat paranormal synchronicity in the experiment, because whatever was the key number for the person who was having that session, that key number would dominate my life for a number of days. Or animals that, like, one person had a dream about a rat and I had to pick up a dead rat outside a school. Or and what's another example? A slightly nicer example than ending on that one. And there was dogs involved in the dreams. The bird, the huge, the huge, what's the buzzard bird? So there was a kind of synchronicity between,
like a vulture or a condor?
It's not a vulture or a condor. It's like, it looks like a big hawk. There was two of them, and the male. Well, I assume it was a male. I didn't know it was a couple until afterwards when I saw them both together, because I'd only seen them either one after the other, like in the person who was symbolizing the number 2. But at the end of the experiment, I saw them both together, and one of the birds was absolutely huge. I mean, its wingspan must have been, as long as both my arms, and it was that was a key. They were involved in I think about 3 people's experiments. I've forgotten why I brought that up now. What was the?
I'm tiring you out. That's why. But I was asking about the watch. Like, you could wear a watch that could measure your heartbeat, measure your sleep patterns, and wondering if you could take like a technology like the box, put it on a watch. But you were describing some kind of like a special
yeah.
medallion that you would install on your chest or something.
Oh yeah, that was why I brought that up, because I felt like the box had a control over my entire environment, so it could talk to me at any point through anything. Like, and that continued afterwards, particularly the first month afterwards. Like a good illustration of this was after the experiment, I actually felt a little bit sad, because for 10 years I've been working towards finding the connection between orgone and consciousness. And I didn't, because originally for 9 of those 10 years, I thought it was going to involve a huge technologically expensive experiment, like marrying an AI with a subtle energy field. And I thought, this is going to take like a lot of money to do this. And then I have this idea about communicating directly with the energy field. And within a few months, I'm actually conducting the experiment. And then I've got what I was aiming for, which is initial evidence of a consciousness of an energy field, and how to and a protocol for talking to an energy field. And so I kind of felt a little bit sad that it was over and that I'd achieved my objective. And then I was, for about a month after the experiment, the buzzards stayed. They were living there was an area of parkland that was cut off both from houses and from the cemetery. For some reason, it's walled and it's not being used for housing. And I think the buzzards were nesting there. They've left now. But for about a month after the end of the experiment, the buzzards were still there. They were quite hard to see because you'd only see them very early in the morning. And so one day I was walking through the cemetery on my dog walk, and I saw the buzzard actually perched on a gravestone. And I thought the energy box is talking to me through the buzzard and the gravestone. And so I didn't go near the buzzard because I didn't want to disturb it. But the next day I went back and read the gravestone, and the gravestone, the name of the person was Alfred Learmouth Booking, which is a very strange name, and and it's unusual to have like a middle name on a gravestone. A few do, but it was both an unusual name and a triple name, but I managed to decode it. It was Alfred is a red Fred, because you got A and red and Fred. And one of Reich's key sayings was, "I follow the red thread." And I was upset that the end of my thread had come. Like I'd achieved my objective earlier than I thought I would. And then Learmouth is learning from the mouth, and booking is writing. So I felt the energy box was saying to me, your red thread now is about helping people sort of learn about their world through sharing your experience verbally and through writing your stuff down. So I've concentrated on getting my stuff into written form, and my stuff is in written form on the internet. I want to get it in a more tangible form offline as well, which I've been working on. So what
a beautiful synchronicity, that story.
Yeah,
I mean, that is just, and then also the 3 names and the importance of the number 3 that we were talking about earlier, and then the personal connection with you. It's almost like shamanism, like the communication is bouncing around you, the bird, the box, all kind of one and the same. Wow, I cannot thank you enough for being on my show today, Leon. We didn't even talk about cloud busting at the conference, but like I said, we'll have you back definitely as a returning guest. What I'd like to do, though, is say goodbye to you, but I'm going to stay live because I want to just take a few minutes to show your website, and I can do that without you here. That's fine because I've kept you long enough. So, Liam, wow, thank you so much for your time today. I definitely got my dose of story medicine. There's just a bunch of chicken scratch and scribbles on my paper here, and thoroughly appreciate you. I'm greatly looking forward to the conference. Like I said, once we say goodbye to Leon, I'll go through some of the stuff here. But there's the thumbnail for today, Story Species, Story Medicine. And of course, Leon Southgate, a real expert. You know, maybe I should have put expert on here. Academic researcher. So I'll go through my links right now, well, your links, but thank you so much, Leon. I really appreciate you being on my show today. Any final thoughts before I remove you from the stage? I'll reiterate your website and all that for you.
No, I think we've covered things really well. We can talk about it. I think it's good not to try to cover too much ground because it's so wide. So like it's quite nice that we've concentrated on the consciousness aspects, so we can concentrate on another aspect another time. So I've enjoyed that.
Absolutely, and likewise. Yes, thank you so much, Leon. Really appreciate you. I'll remove you from the stage now. Have yourself a good night, and you know, keep us updated on that rumbling. If any more rumbling happens, you know. Wow, everybody. Leon Southgate. I mean, I still have tons of questions, but you know, Leon's been with us more than 2 hours. It's almost 3:45 here, Eastern time. So this is the thumbnail for today. There's Leon on the right. This here, I'll show you exactly where I got this image from. Again, Leon's going to be one of our Dragon speakers at our upcoming conference, Falling Consciously. So when the show started, I read over Leon's bio, but just to reiterate, he is an academic researcher specializing in acupuncture, biophysical ergonomy, cloudbusters, the weather, and so much more. I mean, look at how today's episode unfolded. I also have an image here of all of the speakers. So we've got Laird Scranton. He's going to be our keynote, followed by Leon. We've got Dan Armstrong, Daryl James, Rob Khalil, Joshua Shapiro. And I want to show you, I'll put it on screen share, Leon's website that we were highlighting. I also, I've got lots of stuff here, but don't worry, it's all in my bookmarks. So, what do I want to show you? I want to show you this right here. Okay, like I said, there's a few things. This here is one of Leon's books. There it is. Okay, and it's a free copy. So it's almost like 700 pages, 688 pages. He loves to share his work. You can find his books on Amazon. I think it might have timed out here. But as you can see, Leon Southgate collected writings 2000 to 2026. 26 years of research, you know, so it's very, very well organized. I took a look at the chapters, just flipping through it. This is the kind of book that you want to spend some time with. There's images in there. It's very neatly organized, graphs. I'm just kind of giving you a little glance here. So if you want to maybe do some of these experiments at home, it's really encouraging, really inspiring to do that. And this here, right in this moment, I'll put that in the chat for you. Okay, there it is in the chat. All right, let me close this. In theory, I'm organized. What else do I want to show you? I want to show you, okay, Chinese medicine right here. This is Leon's book, an analysis of Chinese medical. Oh, you can't see it. One moment here. Adding it to the stage. All right, here's the book here. Leon was referencing this earlier. Wilhelm Reich. So acupuncture study, anything you want to know about energy, acupuncture, Leon is the guy to talk to. If you just type his name here, Leon Southgate, in your Amazon, hit the search, you'll find other information that comes up from him. I'm not done yet, dragons. Almost. I am getting there. Okay, what else do I want to show you? Screen share. Okay, now I'm going to show you, the Substack. This is where I got that picture. Okay, let me bring it to the stage. All right, so, okay. This here is Leon's Substack. So I've put that link in the chat. Leon's also had it on his screen, but just for fun, let's put it in the chat again. There we go. So Leon's Substack, super interesting to check out. If you follow Leon, you can subscribe for free. There's all kinds of videos, there's articles and links. Here's the picture here I got, Animals of Oregon, the magic number. So there's all kinds of things. You could easily fall down the rabbit hole. There's pages and pages here. Like I said, it's free to subscribe. You can click on the home, click on the podcast. He's got all kinds of things archived. Just even today chatting with Leon, you can see he's very open. I myself was very interested about plasma, and Leon brought it up, not me. So that was more synchronicity. So here's how to stay up to date with Leon. Like I said, show him some loving, order his books. And the final link that I want to show you is my Buy Me a Coffee. So you can attend the conference that Leon is presenting at. So this is my Buy Me a Coffee. It is absolutely free to follow me. And then you just get in on the emails. When I go live to host Story Species, Story Medicine, I always create a link and send it the day of. So this is the homepage. If you just scroll to the top, home, memberships, post, gallery, shop. Membership, that's where I offer a private membership if you wanted help with, clearing your chakras, intrusive entities, mind reprogramming, no problem. Book a session with me. But this one right here, collective membership, Project 30, Isis Unity Consciousness. It's a flat rate each month. I'm working with pole energy here, so you can read about it on your own. But it's worth noting, that it does come with plural bonuses. We've got multiple bonuses, and one of those bonuses worth mentioning is it includes a free link to my online conferences. And so if you feel like you're going to be coming to the online conferences all of the time, you might as well get in on the membership here. Okay. Posts. I post in my Buy Me a Coffee almost every day. So if you follow me for free, this just defaults to getting emailed to you. As you can see here, the top left one, number 31, Leon Southgate, first time guest, Story Species, Story Medicine. So I cross post onto my Facebook group, the free Facebook group, the Dragon Dream Soul Tribe Collective. So, and my posts are pretty much up to date. So, if you go on a vacation or whatever and get sidetracked, you don't have to worry about falling behind on my content. These are just some images worth showing you, highlighting Leon Southgate, the show, Story Species, Story Medicine, Extra Strength. I know I got my dose today. Special logo here for Falling Consciously. And again, there's Leon, top, front row, center. And my schedule, I run a pretty tight ship, folks, when it comes to conferences. So Leon Southgate, you can see right here, 10:30 a.m. This is Eastern time. So I'd love for you to be there all day, but I get it. Some people, they got to delegate their time schedules. So if you really want to make sure you catch Leon live, 11:10 a.m. on our big day, Saturday, September 19th. Now, I like to get excited and I like to start advertising. So if you're wondering why there's some blanks here, that's why. Because like I said, when you follow me for free, you get in on this kind of stuff. So just fresh, Sunday by midnight, all the speakers, including Leon, had to let me know, yours truly, what their description title was called and a little description, and I'm going to be plugging that in here. So you're going to see the updated agenda. Again, this is all through Project 30, My Dreams Half Remembered, Half Misunderstood. We're your soul tribe. We get you. Okay, I've got books, oracles, you can connect. This is just a cool AI image. And if you're feeling ambitious, the next conference is going to be Season of Dreams, Saturday, December 12th. I don't have any speakers or anybody lined up. So if you're interested in presenting, reach out to me. If you want to get your ticket for Seasons of Dreams and Falling Consciously, you can do that. So, okay, let me go back a screen here. Okay, so the gallery, this here, just posting some images, but what's really important is the shop. So I've got free resources here. There's the first 2 conferences, absolutely free and available to you. Show me some loving by liking, subscribing. If you'd like to send me some money, I would appreciate that to help support the overhead costs, keep the show going. Right here, book 8, I provide the Scary Dreams. Book 8 is called Scary Dreams. I don't have an introduction. I called it an FYI. So FYI and Lushing, the first story, you can read that absolutely free. And of course, these 2 are really important. Falling Consciously, this is the one Leon is presenting at. So we had a phenomenal time, phenomenal feedback, and we're really looking forward to a 3rd round. And we would absolutely love and adore for you to be there. If you click on the arrow, there's more pictures. And like I said, I'll be uploading the schedule. We've got Sheila's Spiral Sister Murray returning, this time as a healer, providing us with some music. And we've got Julia Ankerhaven, Michael Kopf, and Jason H., my tech crew, Dragon Visionary, that's me. And like I said, I'll be updating this schedule. So today's story, species, story, medicine, it was definitely a big one. And like I said, we just really scratched the surface, you know, and I'd love to know in the comments, folks like me who don't have a science background, I felt it was really easy to follow Leon. I thought he was able to simplify things. And I'm wondering about you. I felt like it was just really laid back. Like I was, I think it's cool when I can follow along in the science, you know what I mean? And then that business about dynamic energy, that seemed to really play in my mind. So, wow is all I can really say. So thank you so much, everybody, for dreaming with me. I hope you're all having a great day. The full moon is this Thursday. It's also going to be the last full moon of just the month of August, the last full moon. I'm making flora. There's a BMAC post that went out about it. So check it out. There's lots for us to connect with. Okay, so I'm going to play my outro video. In theory, it's going to be the one highlighting the conference. Yep, it's there. All right. So again, Dragon Dreamers, thank you so much for dreaming with me. Did you know that you're medicine? You are. Your medicine. When you share your story, you share your medicine. When you receive a story, you receive medicine. This is all part of our healing journey. Healing with the earth. You, me, us, the earth. Pachamamas in our own rights. Walking, talking trees we are. Earth, fire, air, wind. Maybe plasma and other stuff too. I'm not hung up on categories. Let me know your thoughts, feelings, and opinions. You're important. Things are available to you, and you matter. You absolutely matter, and you're not alone. You know, people, this show is targeted for people who are scared, people who are having these experiences, hearing things in their head and whatnot, and you're wondering, like, what's going on. And then you listen to somebody like Leon Southgate, who's seriously been, you know, studying this for more than 30 years. really helps validate that you're not losing your mind. You know, people gaslight us to the point that we even gaslight ourselves. So if you're hearing interesting things or experiencing interesting phenomena, absolutely lovingly invite you to check out Leon's work. I know I need like a good few years, I think, just to have time off and read. Let me know if you can relate in the comments. All right, this time for real, Dragon Dreamers, I gotta let you go. Okay, take care. We'll see you next time. Thank you for dreaming with me. Gina Virginia Casella signing out. Take care. It's not letting me sign out. I guess you're stuck with me. Okay, this time for real. Okay, take care.